Cool. So 16G sine and cosine graphs. A function that repeats itself is called a periodic function. These are like y equals sine x and y equals cosine x. They are both periodic. The period, what we call the period of the graph, is the distance between each repetition, which we'll see in a second when we draw the graphs. So y equals sine x repeats itself after every 2 pi. That's like the whole way around the unit circle. Remember 2 pi, it starts repeating. Therefore, the period is 2 pi units. The maximum and minimum values of y equals sine x and y equals cosine x are 1 and -1. So they oscillate between y equals 1 and y equals -1. Goes up and down. And the amplitude is the distance between the horizontal middle line of the graph and the maximum. So in both those graphs, it's 1. We'll see that in a second. So the three main things that you need to be concerned about is the period, the maximum and the minimum, which also means the range, and the amplitude. Okay, so let's draw the graphs. Okay, so we're going to draw the graph of y equals sine x for x values that are between -pi and 3 pi. So we want our y-axis, our x-axis. We want it to go up to 3 pi. Try and split that so you get pi there, 2 pi there, and about there is -pi. Okay, so before we said that the maximum and minimum is 1 and -1, so that's on the y. Okay, and so what we want to have, we said the period before, and that's the interval between each repetition is 2 pi. So every time you hit 2 pi, it has to go and repeat itself. So the sine graph actually looks like this. So it starts at the origin, and then after every 2 pi, it repeats itself. Okay. So this would be the origin, that would be 2 pi. Halfway between, it goes through there.
Does it go all the way to like 1 and -1?
Yeah. And halfway between those, it goes up. So it goes up, then comes back down, then goes down to -1 here, goes to 2 pi, goes back up, and goes down to 3 pi. And same back the other way.
We don't draw
Right, so it comes up, goes down to pi, down to -1, 2 pi, and comes back down the other way as well. Be good if you can make it a little more curvy. Mine's a bit too pointy.
Oh, mine's like more pointy than that.
Should be a bit curvier. So you want a bit more of a curve to it. They are hard to draw freehand though. You see that after every 2 pi, it starts to repeat itself. Goes up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, what about cosine? for the same interval between negative pi and 3 pi. Just draw our axes again. We know cosine x, y equals cosine x has the range of between 1 and negative 1. The cosine graph looks very similar to the sine graph, except for it doesn't start at the origin, it starts at 1. Same period, it repeats itself after every 2 pi. So it goes like that, and then starts to repeat itself. So we want it to come back up to this point here. Exactly halfway between this point and this point is the lowest point, so that would be down here. And then it's going to pass through like that. We can extend it out. And of course, back the other way as well. So it's got a period of 2 pi, because after every 2 pi it starts to repeat itself. It's got a range of between negative 1 and 1. An amplitude of 1, because our midline of the graph goes through the x-axis, y equals 0. And the distance between the midline and the maximum is 1, so it's amplitude of 1.
Pretty much tissue paper. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna be very. Is it 2 pi? 3 pi? Oh, okay. I don't even go into this one. Oh, yeah.
Right, so these are our two basic formulas for a sine and a cosine graph. Y equals a sine nx and y equals a cosine nx. A equals the amplitude, which is the distance between the midline and the maximum. The period is 2 pi divided by whatever that n value is. The range is between negative a and a. If you have negative a in front, then it's just a reflection in the x-axis. So it's just the same graph but flipped upside down. And if you have a negative n value inside that bracket, then your sine negative x is the same as negative sine x. So it's just going to look like a reflection in the x-axis. But your cosine graph doesn't change. Because essentially, because the cosine graph starts at 1, if you reflect it in the y-axis, it's going to look exactly the same because it's symmetrical. Okay. I'll demonstrate that. So this is sine, right? And if you reflect it about the y-axis, it's going to go this way, right? But if you try and flip cosine graph over that y-axis, it'll just look exactly the same, nothing changes. Okay? Okay, so just try 2 examples. Try to sketch the graph of y equals 3 sine 2x. So it said A equals 3, our amplitude, our period equals 2 pi over 2, which equals pi, so it repeats itself after every pi unit. The range is between -3 and 3. Oops, making a mess. That's essentially all you need to know to be able to sketch the graph. Alright, so I might do mine to 2 pi. You can choose whatever interval you like because it's not set in the question. So that'll be pi, that'll be half pi, and that'll be 1.5 pi. Our range goes from 3 to -3. Starts at the origin. Right, so it has to repeat itself every pi units. So it's going to come through this point. It's going to go up here and down here. So we come up, down, back up. You can keep going. Let's try another one. Sketch y equals -4 cosine theta on 2. Right. Our amplitude. What is it? Or just 4. It's just the distance. So we can just say 4. Sorry? Because it's... No, it doesn't really change anything. It just changes where it starts, basically. What is our period? It's 2 pi over n. What is our n in this case? A half.
So it would be 4 pi.
Yes, it would be. And our range? -4 to 4. Yep. And also there is a negative in front, so there's a reflection in the x-axis. Yep. Okay. This is our theta axis and our y-axis. Now I'm going to go all the way up to 4 pi. Halfway will be 2 pi. Go 3 pi here and pi here. Our range is 4. Yeah, if you want to go all the way to here, you can go pi over 2. 3 pi on 2. No, because the period just it remains the same. Because those intervals are all there no matter if you label them or not. They're still there. Right, so usually our cosine graph starts up here, but because it's negative, it's actually going to start down here. So it's going to look like that. And that has to happen every 4 pi. So it's going to come up and go back down and end here. Right, the highest point is exactly halfway between the start and the finish, which is 2 pi. And then it's going to go through the x-axis halfway between the start and the middle, which is pi and 3 pi. So then you just join them up. And there it is. Of course, you can make it keep going because there's no set interval in the question.
Why is it like that?